Hello everyone, welcome to another tutorial of Spring Boot series. My name is Jairaj and thanks for joining again. So before starting our discussion, I would like to mention that here we are going to discuss MongoTemplate in comparison with MongoClient. But if you want to see more about MongoClient and MongoTemplate in details with fundamentals and how to use them, please watch my tutorials from number 21 to 24. And to understand this particular tutorial, watch my previous tutorial number 27. And for links, please look into the description where I have provided all the details of my previous tutorials. And if you guys haven't subscribed yet, please do, because many important tutorials related with Spring Boot and a new series related with various technologies are coming. So like, subscribe, and let's start with this tutorial. In this tutorial, we will continue our discussion from previous tutorial where we have seen MongoClient, and in this tutorial we will discuss MongoTemplate, and we will try to replicate all functionality and we will compare them both. So first thing we need is the project, and anyways we are making same thing, so let's let me go ahead and copy from our previous project and rename it. And for that, just go to your Eclipse and copy this project and paste it here. And it is asking for me to rename, and I'm giving name something like MongoTemplate and copy, and let me close this MongoClient project. So we have controller, we have service, and we have repository. Let's start with this first API, which is get one, and this API is basically returning us the list of books, list of all the books which is in our database. So this function is calling the service, and this service is calling the repository. And in this repository we need the object of MongoTemplate. So in previous tutorial we were using this MongoClient, but in this one we don't need MongoClient, we need MongoTemplate. And how to create the object of MongoTemplate and how many ways are there to creating this MongoTemplate, we have already discussed everything in our previous tutorial number 24. Please go and visit that tutorial because that tutorial is very much important. And in this tutorial we're gonna use the application property file approach to create the object of MongoTemplate. So for that, let me go to resources and then application.properties, and here I need to specify spring.data.mongo.host, and in host I need to put localhost, and then same way spring.data.mongo, and we have this port number, and we were using 27017 port. And if you have credentials you can put it here, but I don't have any, so I can use like this. So internally what is happening is Spring Boot at the time of application startup, it will create an object of MongoClient using these credentials, and I just need to auto-wire the object of MongoTemplate in my repository. So let me go to my repository, and here I need to auto-wire. So auto-wire MongoTemplate, but as you can see here it is not coming in the suggestions. So the reason why it is not coming in the suggestion, because it is a layer on top of MongoClient from Spring Data Mongo. So meaning of it is not from the Mongo driver. MongoTemplate is from Spring Data Mongo. So we need to add the dependency of Spring Data Mongo, and for that you can go to Maven repository and you can search for Spring Data Mongo. But here I want to show you another approach where you just need to open this pom.xml and you go in this dependency tab here at the bottom, and here we have this add button. So add it, and you can search here Spring Data Mongo, and if you hit the enter you can see here we have a list where the first one is Spring Boot Starter Data MongoDB dependency, and I am selecting this latest version. Okay, and save it. So if I go in pom.xml now, I can see here we have our MongoDB dependency here. So now if I go to my repository, and here if I do control space, I can see we have this MongoTemplate in suggestions, and we have created the object of MongoTemplate. So now in this function we need to use MongoTemplate instead of MongoClient. So I am not removing this, because if I remove this then the bottom function will give an error, so we will remove it at the end. But the first function here, get all function, so we need to remove this because MongoTemplate will handle everything internally and we don't need to worry about this. So just remove that, and here I can do something like MongoTemplate first, and I can do find all. So as you can see here, we have only two options for find all. One is taking the entity class and another one is taking the entity class as well as the collection name. So in previous tutorial we have already seen how to use entity class. So entity class is nothing but it is a separate class, and we use that separate class to hold the information. So in our previous tutorial we took example of employee, and we create the employee class where we have fields like first name, last name and stuff, and all the data which is coming from the database, those field will handle it. But let's say we don't have entity class, then we can use this find all options, and here you can specify our another class which is document.class, and this collection name for us is books. So basically MongoTemplate can be used with entity class as well as our database related objects. So MongoTemplate we can use both the ways. You can use with the domain class as well as you can use with the database objects. So moving ahead, if you can see here, this find all is returning the document, the list of the documents. So I can directly return this. So we don't need to do anything like this find iterable and then looping over that iterable object. We can directly return this. So let me just delete this, and this is returning the list of objects. So that's why we need to change this return type. So let me change everywhere. First repository, then in service, and same way in our controller. So now there is no error, and I can run this application as a Spring Boot. And if I go to Postman and if I hit the same API, you can see here it is returning us list of all the books without any change. But the major difference here is in the repository. But the major difference is in the books repository. If you see here, we have only one line of code. We don't need to worry about so many things here. So this is the power of MongoTemplate, and more precisely this is the power of Spring Data Mongo. So moving ahead, our next API, which is post one, and in post API we don't need to change anything here. Same way this add books will call this service, and here we are converting this map object into document object, and same way this repository is taking the object of document, and we are doing everything here. So we don't need this MongoClient database and collection things, so I'm removing it. And if I do MongoTemplate object, and if I call MongoTemplate object and do dot and insert, we have couple of options here. Okay, so if you are using entity class, you can use this first two options, but we are not using any entity class, so we need to go with this object where we need to pass our documents first, and then we need to pass our collection name. So our collection name is books, and we can save our object into database, something like this. But as you can see here, this insert method of MongoTemplate is returning the document object. So the meaning of that is, if you remember our previous approach where we were using this insert one method of collection object, this insert one method was returning nothing, right? And that's why we did this try and catch block to create our custom output. But in this case we don't need to do anything like this, and we can directly return this function because it is returning the object of document. So whatever we are storing, it is returning with the ID. So we can remove this, and here instead of string we can return document, because this return type is gonna be document for this insert method. So let me change everywhere. So now no errors, and let me restart this application. And if I go to Postman and post API, and let's say we don't need any of this, so let me remove that, and we have these two fields only. And if I do send, you can see here we have title, ISBN, but at the time of saving we don't have ID, but at the time of getting back we have ID. So this ID means that this object is successfully stored in our database with this particular ID. So in our get API, if I do send and if I search for this title, which is my book, you can see here at the very last we have this object which have only two fields, title and ISBN, and we have one ID. The same way, if you go in our repository, we are writing only one line of code. We are not doing anything else. So let's move ahead and create our put API. Same way, there is no change in our controller. We need to go to our repository. So this update is calling service, and this update method of service is calling the update method of our repository. And here, so here in our repository update method, here I can do something like MongoTemplate. And if I do dot and search for update, we have a couple of options where we have this update first option, and this option is taking query So this query will help Mongo to find that particular document that we are updating, and then the update object, which is our actual object that we are trying to update, and then we have collection name. So first let me write this query, and for that we have this query which is from Spring Framework Data MongoDB core query, and let me give name as a query equals new query, and I can put criteria inside this. So something like criteria dot, where we have this underscore id, and this id is gonna be unique, so where id is our actual id, and we can pass this query here in our update first, and we need to create this update object. So if I do control space, then I can see here this data.mongodb core query update. Let me give name as update. So update equal to new, and if I do control space, I can see multiple options here. So I can choose this basic object. So update is a parent interface and basic update is the implementation class, and here I can pass this document something like this, and now we can pass this update here, and for us this collection name is books. So we are ready for our code, so we don't need this kind of code anymore. We can remove this directly, and as you can see here, this update first is returning update result. So I can use that update result for something like, so I can use this update result by doing something like this, and here I can pass ur dot, and I can see get match count or get modified count. So this function will return me how many objects get updated. So I can return this, and before this I can do something like updated documents, and here something like this. So that's how we can create this update API. And same way, if I do delete, then here this delete API is taking id as a argument. This is calling the service class, and then this is calling the delete class. So same way we need to change everything here in our repository. So here if I do MongoTemplate dot delete or MongoTemplate dot remove, you can see here we have multiple options. So this option is for us where we need to pass query and collection name, and for us query will be same thing like this one, where we are identifying our document based on id, and here collection name is books. So I can remove this piece of code. So if you put your cursor here on the top of remove, you can see here this function is returning delete result object. So same way what we did in our update method, we can use this delete result, and we can create our custom output something like number of deleted documents equals, I can put plus then dr dot, and here we have get deleted count. So that's how you can create the function delete, and same way we need to do very less amount of code. So this was our CRUD operations, and now moving ahead, let's go with little bit complex API. And this paging API was a little bit complex, where we used to pass page number, page size, and fields with some sorting mechanism. Okay, so same way we don't need to change here in our controller, and this controller is calling service, and this service is calling our repository. So most of our changes will be here. So let me go ahead, and here in this function, if I do MongoTemplate, so if you do dot here, and in this list of methods, you can see here we don't have any method which supports pagination directly. So that's why MongoTemplate doesn't support pagination directly, and this part will be little bit tricky in terms of development. And for projection, we have query objects, and you can pass a field that we did in our previous tutorial. So in this case, we need to use this find functionality, and here we will modify this query based on our requirement. So let me choose this one, and this query will be our filtration query. So let me make an object of that query. So query equals query new query, and inside this query we are not passing any criteria, because we are not filtering here based on any condition. We are telling Mongo to give us everything but in the pages. Okay, so moving ahead for this fields argument. So this field is for projection, and here If you remember, in our previous tutorial we did something like dot, and we can do here something called fields. And so on this fields object I can do include and exclude operation. So this include is returning field object, as you can see here, which means we can create chain here, meaning if you have multiple fields that you can do include like many times and you can create entire chain. So in that case I can go through these fields and I can put all the fields with the include method. So for that, let me do something like for loop, and here in this for loop I can iterate over this field. Let me give this name field, and then it is coming from this fields argument. And let me cut this, and inside this for loop if I pass this field, then it will run through multiple times and it will create the entire query. Okay, so this query is ready for our projection, and now we need to do our pagination thing. So first let me move ahead, and here we need to do our pagination stuff. So first let me create our short object, and in previous tutorial we also created this short object by calling this short class, and I can do short by, and I can pass this properties something like this. So this short object is also ready, and let me edit this. This entity class will be document.class, and this collection name will be books. So now for pagination purpose we need to use pageable first, and let me give name something called pageable equals, and we need to use page request. So if I do dot on the page request, this is gonna be page request of, I need to choose page size, which will be, the first one is page number, second one is gonna be page size, and third option I can use, which is short. And now I need to tell Mongo to give me response based on this particular object. So I can do something like, I can call this query, and I can tell query to go with this particular pageable request. Okay, something like this. So now I need to run this. So let me take this MongoClient find operation here, and after, let me put this after this query. But this find function is returning the list of documents, as you can see here. So let me create that list of documents, and that name will be something called books. And now I need to do my operations on these books. So I need to retrieve the page first of all. So this page is gonna be of a document, and which, let me give name something like doc page. And here we have this pageable execution utility files, and inside that I have this get page. So this get page will ask for few things. So this content is gonna be our list of books. Then we have this pageable object, and then we have this total supplier. So this supplier is gonna be our function, or more precisely it's gonna be a functional interface which calls our lambda function something like this. And I can call count function on this, and this count will take a object of query, and our entity class will be document.class, something like this. So this page object is ready, and if you remember in our previous tutorial we used this page object, we retrieve the information that we need. So for that, let me create this response object. So inside this response I can put all the details. So first let me put data, and this will come from this page. So if I do doc page here, and if I do dot, you can see here we have options where we need to do this get content. So this get content is a list of documents. Secondly, we have this response dot put, and here we need to do this something like total number of pages. I can again use this doc page object, and if I do dot get, and I have this total pages. Same way, let me copy this, and here total number of elements, or I can do current page, which will be simple our page number. From here we don't need to ask this document object, and we can return this response map. So let me change, let me delete this because this was our old code that we don't know, and here we need to change the return type of this function. And same way in our service I need to change stuff here, and I don't need any of this thing. I can directly do return here, and I can delete this code that I don't require anymore. So here we have only one line of code, and we put everything here in our repository. So if I restart this application, and if I go in my Postman, and if I hit this, I can see here it is giving us list of all the books, where I can change the page size from 20 to, let's say I have 50, and I want page number 2, and if I do hit send, I can see I have 50 books in one page, and we are on currently number 2 page, and we have total number of 3 pages. So that's how I can create a dynamic API, including projection, including paging, and including sorting mechanism. And move forward to our aggregation part. So we were counting the total number of pages, and this API was for that. So we don't need to change anything here in controller. So let me move to service, and in same way in service also we don't need to do anything, and in repository we need to write our code. So aggregation is very easy with MongoTemplate, because if you go here and do MongoTemplate, if you do dot, then we have these aggregation options. And so for us, this method will be appropriate, where we need to pass aggregation, we need to pass collection name. Let me put it, which is books, and output we need is in the form of document, the list of documents. So I can put document dot class. So we have one class in our Spring Data Mongo. If you do aggregate here and do control space, you can see here these options: Spring Framework, Data, MongoDb Core, which have this aggregation. And let me give this name aggregation equals, again we need to call this aggregation class, and if I do dot, I need to do this new aggregation, and inside this new aggregation, so if you remember, this is our query, we are doing group first, and inside group we need to pass this one. So first we need to do group something like this, and inside this group we don't need to pass anything, because as you can see here, this ID is null. We need to pass the names of the fields that we want to group, but in this case we are using all the documents, so that's why we don't need to pass anything here. That means we are passing null. So this ID was null. Okay, and after that, if I do dot, I can see here we have something called sum. So inside this sum, I need to provide what I want to sum. So I got this count, I got this group, I got this ID null, then count, and we have sum. So inside this sum, I need to pass this $ count, something like this, and we have our aggregation ready. But we need to tell that we want this result as a count, so I need to pass as count. So whatever the response is, whatever the calculation is there, it will be stored under this field name count. So this is ready, but this aggregation is returning me the list of document. But here if I do dot get row result, which is returning the document, and directly I can return this field. I don't need this much data. So as you can see here, we are getting rid of so many lines of code, so we don't need this. And we need to change this return type, which will be document, or so more precisely it could be map also. So I can do map and string, something like this, and in our service I can directly return that, so something like this, and I can delete this. So if I stop this server and restart this application, and if I go to Postman, and in Postman we have this count page, and if I do hit send, I can see here we have result where we have count equal to 125,000. So that's how we can use aggregation, which is very easy with the templates. So you can start comparing now. If you want to do pagination, template is not the good idea, but if you want to do aggregation, template is a good idea, right? So moving ahead, we have one more functionality to cover, which is this category, and we need to sort our books based on category. And so the same way, we don't need to change anything here in our controller, so we can move to our service, and inside this service also we don't need to change here much. And if I go to get books by categories, I can do everything here. So as you can see here, we are filtering books based on some condition, and condition was that category. So we need to use the find function, but with the query. So if I do MongoTemplate and do find, I have this query, then it is taking entity class and collection name. So this option is gonna be easy for us. So we need to write this query. Our entity class will be document.class and our collection name, which is books, and this query we need to write properly. So first let's start with creating query object. Query equals new query, and inside this we need to pass our criteria. So I can do query dot add criteria, and inside this we have criteria dot where key will be our categories. Okay, so we are targeting this categories, and this category should be, if I do dot, I can see here I have all, alike, and exit, and we have this in object. So finally we need to create this JSON query. Okay, so what we are doing is we are telling Mongo to filter based on the category whose element should be inside this collection. So this so here we need to pass collection, and these categories we need to convert it. So I can do something like arrays dot as list, and I can convert this array of categories into the list of the categories, and this query is ready. Okay, so that's how you can create this query, and I can pass this query directly and filter. So as you can see here, this find function is returning the list of documents, so I can directly return those, and I can delete this all code, and we need to change this return type. So instead of object I can do document, and in service I need to change this data type. So same way, if I stop this server and restart this application, and if I go in Postman and if I hit send, I can see all the books with Java. But here, as you can see, it is giving me everything. But let's say I want only titles, I don't want anything else. So let me go to our repository, and here I need to add one more line of code where query dot fields dot include, and I can put title and exclude. I don't want ID, because ID is a default one. So every time you don't want ID, you need to specify it explicitly. So I am telling Mongo to give me only title, and I don't want ID. So let me stop this, restart this, and if I go in Postman and hit the same API, you can see here it is giving us a 96 total number of books under the Java category, and we have this the title of it. So if I change from Java to internet, and if I hit send, you can see here we have only 41 books which is in this category, and this is the list of all the books. So that's how you can use MongoTemplate to achieve our goal of creating dynamic API, including projections, aggregations, and some complex queries. So that's all for now in this tutorial, and in next tutorial we will see how to replicate same functionality with MongoRepository, and we will see some of the differences between in these three. So till now we have seen one difference between MongoClient and MongoTemplate was that if we want to use pagination, MongoTemplate is not the good idea. But if you want to use aggregation, then MongoTemplate is very easy. And if you compare the amount of code that we need to do, MongoTemplate is very easy, and we need to write a very less amount of code. So that was the comparison of MongoClient and MongoTemplate, and in next tutorial we will compare all three. So don't forget to watch next tutorial, because that will be also very important. So see you then. Like, subscribe, and keep learning. Thank you very much.